Who was Socrates? Socrates was born in Athens in 469 BCE. This was the golden age of Greek art and literature. Democracy flourished under the rule of Pericles. During this time the Parthenon was built, and Phidias sculpted Athena. In the latter half of Socrates' life, the war between Sparta and Athens overshadowed his life. Thucydides wrote the only surviving account of the Peloponnesian conflict between Athens and Sparta. The Spartans were thought to have poisoned the waters of Athens, causing the outbreaks of plague within the city walls. After the defeat of Athens under the oligarchy of the 30 tyrants, Socrates refused to obey orders to arrest an innocent man. So he made enemies of the aristocrats. Later, when democracy was restored, he was accused of having close associates from within the tyrants, which made him an enemy also of the democrats. The accuser Aristophanes gives a very unflattering portrait of Socrates in his play The Clouds. He makes him out to be an imbecile, concerning himself with nonsense, the air and the sun, and in a pompous manner makes his disciples believe he is very important. Xenophon's account is one of an historian. He says that Socrates was traditionally pious, and his homilies were bland criticisms. He taught virtue to others mainly by example of his own life. Xenophon stresses Socrates' propensity for boastful talk. He said Socrates acted in a way to invite condemnation because he wanted to die rather than face the infirmities of old age. Now, Plato's dialogues and his account of Socrates are separated into 3 groups, although there is no certainty or consensus on the exact chronology of these groups. In the first set of dialogues, listed here, Socrates is an inquirer, not a teacher. Most accept these dialogues as those presenting Socrates' ideas. In the middle group, Socrates is presented as a teacher in full possession of a system of thought. And in the last group of dialogues, Socrates' role is at a minimum. Thus, in Plato's account of Socrates' character, he claims he is a moral man who is extremely agile with his intellect and is able to consistently reveal the ignorance of others. His mission is to have insight into justice and virtue. Socrates was inspired by the oracle of Delphi's claim that he was the wisest man of Athens. Although Socrates felt he knew nothing, he then tried to find others who were wiser. Socrates did not think, as did Protagoras, that man is the measure of all things. He was also disillusioned with Anaxagoras, and so he was not concerned in any way with scientific inquiry. Socrates wanted to find legitimate definitions for ideas of justice and virtue. The key character within each dialogue of Plato is representative of a virtue. Socrates aims at a general definition in order to know whether the virtue universally has a particular property. Socrates might flatter his companion into thinking he is wise on a particular virtue. His associates offer various definitions, all of which Socrates shows to be inadequate. Socrates finds minor flaws through analogy or counterexample to force his partner into contradiction. His partner admits ignorance. But neither does Socrates offer any conclusions. Both admit ignorance and agree to pursue truth. Socrates assumes happiness is achieved by cultivating a virtuous soul. The soul was the source of truth. In spite of the possibility of no answer to his questions, the queries had to continue. The Socratic method of Elenchus assumes that truth can be discovered, and that the search for truth is the quest of a lifetime. In Plato's dialogue The Apology, Socrates defends himself against new and old accusers, against the aristocrats and the democrats. Meletus attacks his prior association with Anaxagoras and with the sophists who taught argumentation for money. Socrates denies the charges. He says, "I have nothing to do with such things. Neither is it true, even if you have heard it from someone, that I undertake to educate people and take fees. For I know in my conscience that I am not wise in anything, great or small. Then what in the world does he mean when he says I am the wisest?" So I went to one after another after that, and I saw I was disliked, and I sorrowed and feared, but still it seemed necessary to hold the gods' business of the highest importance. Socrates was condemned to die, and when he died, Plato was in his late 20s. His teacher of 8 years refused to escape, although given the opportunity, and lived up to his own standard of justice, follow the laws. He drank hemlock, which slowly paralyzed his body. In the dialogue The Crito, which describes Socrates' last moments, Plato, for the first time, introduces his own ideas of virtue and justice. This is the topic of the next lecture.